This is a demonstration of how to grow your landscaping business or your lawn and landscaping business. And in this demonstration, I'm using Increased Profit software to show you the power of targeting some of your key performance indicators. So I'm just going to run through some of the figures I've already entered on here. I've gone into the setup and I've entered a lawn landscaping business. And I've set up the year end as 31st December 2017. In the data, I've put in sales of 89,250, cost of sales of 15,870, and overheads of 71,360. And this leaves a very small profit of 2,000 or just over £2,000. So of course something needs to be done because a profit of £2,000 isn't going to get you very far. I've also entered the number of opening customers, and in this case is 66. I've entered the average transaction value of £45.43. The definition of the average transaction value is to take the total sales over a given period and divide this by the number of transactions over the same period. I've also then entered the number of times opening customers return, and in this case I've entered it as 30. So over the course of 12 months, these customers come back to you 30 times. The Increased Profit software has automatically calculated the number of times new customers return, which in this case is 15.5. I won't go into too much detail of how that's calculated, but effectively it's an average. So it's assuming that customers come on gradually throughout the year, and of course the ones that join you at the beginning of the year are more likely to come to you close to the 30 times, and the ones that come to you towards the end of the year are only going to be coming 1 or 2 times, and that takes the average. I've entered a customer defection rate, in this case 5%, so in other words the customers that you lose for various reasons. I've also then entered an audience or your reach, and in this case that's 900. So that would be visits to your website, that would also be your advertising, but you've got to be careful that you don't double count here. So if you're doing leaflet drops, that would be your audience covered by your leaflet drops. But of course a certain percentage of those will also go to your website. So you might have to do a bit of adjustment there, but I've assumed that's 900 in this case. I then assumed that of that audience or visitor reach, these are converted at 1%. So that means that for every 100 people reached or who visit the website, 1% of those, or 1, converts to a lead. I then assume that of those, 80% of those convert to a prospect. And the difference between a lead and a prospect is that a lead is someone that makes contact with you but is not necessarily going to turn into a prospective customer. So for example, with your lawn and landscaping business, if someone contacts you through your website and they're outside of your area, whilst they are a potential customer because they fall within your remit of what you do, they may be outside your area that you operate within. So I've assumed that's 80%. I've also then assumed that your prospect to sales conversions is 40%. So out of every 100 people you see, 40 of those would convert to customers. So I'm going to jump straight to the workings now I've got that information in there. So I'm going to show you the power of targeting key performance indicators. And generally speaking, a KPI, or key performance indicator, evaluates and measures the success of a business. And in this case, for example, one of our KPIs is the average transaction value. So what we're going to look at is what happens if we try to increase each one of these KPIs. And then we can see the power of leverage by focusing on a combination of these KPIs for your lawn and landscaping business. So in this case, what I'm going to do, I'm going to assume that I can increase my audience reach or visitors. For example, by doing some careful search engine optimization of your website, or if you don't have a website, by setting up a website, you can quite quickly gain some more traction and get more visitors. But I'm going to assume that we can double this to 1800. Now looking over to the right hand side, we'll see that by doubling our audience reach, or the number of visitors we have, it's increased our sales by £2,000. and this has increased our profits by £1,700. I'm then going to have a look at our visitor to lead conversion, and I'm going to assume that 1% is quite low. So by doing a few tweaks to the website, with the design, for example, with the customer engagement, I'm going to assume that we can increase that to 2%. So again, I'm going to double that. Now again, what you can see is the combined effect of those two changes have increased our sales by £6,300. But more importantly, it's increased our profits by over £5,000. Our lead to prospect conversion was already fairly high, and it's sitting at 80%. So I'm going to assume that we can increase that a bit, and I'm going to assume that we increase that to 85%. And you can do things like making sure that your leaflets are more targeted. Also, on your website, you can make sure it's clear the area that you cover, so that people outside your area don't phone up or they don't make contact with you, so you're not wasting valuable time having to sift through people that aren't applicable to the area that you cover. Taking a look at the prospect to sales conversion, I would suggest that 40% is low, and with a bit of careful working with your sales literature, the way you present yourself and how you target your customers in a different way, I'm going to suggest that you can easily get that up to 60%. So I'm going to put in 60% there. Now, we've got our sales increased by £10,000, or just over £10,000 actually, and our profit increased by £8,600. So this provides a net profit for our business, if this were the case, of just over £10,000. Now again, that's not a huge amount of money, but it's certainly better than where we started at £2,000. I'm also going to assume that we can reduce our customer defection rate by making sure that we provide better customer service, by making sure that we always do a good job, and so on. So I'm going to assume that we can cut that in half. So I'm going to put that down to 2.5%. And you'll see that the sales has increased to just under £12,000 increase. Moving further down, coming back to our average transaction value, I'm going to assume that by some careful introduction of perhaps some higher value items to certain customers, that we could quite easily increase that to £55. So I'm going to enter £55 in there. Now, that's quite a big jump. So if you take a look, our sales have now increased by £33,000, or just over in fact. So our total sales have gone from £89,250 to £122,000. But more importantly, our profit has increased by £27,000, which provides a net profit of just under £30,000. Now that's starting to look like a business that is making a reasonable amount of money for somebody to live on. And I'm sure that if you have your own lawn and landscaping business, having a net profit of £30,000 suddenly starts to make things look a bit more enticing. Now the other metric or KPI that we're going to look at is the number of times your opening customers return, which will also impact on the number of times your new customers return. Now I'm going to assume that we can increase that to 35, because in the assumption of the original 30, I made the assumption that during the winter months we had no visits whatsoever. But of course in the winter months there's certain things that you can do to people's lawns or gardens, so you can encourage people or introduce new services to increase the number of times your customers return or ask you to go out and tend to their lawns or their landscaping. So I'm going to assume that we can increase that to 35. So now, if we look at our sales, these have increased by 53,641. So our sales have jumped from 89,250 to 142,891. But more importantly, again, is our net profit has jumped a staggering amount from £2,000, or just over, to £46,000. And this represents over 2,000% increase in profits. Now I'm going to leave this video here because I don't want this to run on for too long, but I want to leave you with this thought that if you enter these numbers into, for example, a program like Increased Profit Software, and you can see the impact of combining the increases in each of these various metrics, this will encourage you to work out ways of how you can increase your business, or how you can look to increase your sales and your profits of your lawn and landscaping business. Now, of course, you could put your own numbers into the software, and of course you can then try out your own various tweaks and increases of each of the metrics that we've played around with in this video. And then the important thing is to start asking questions of how you're going to achieve those increases. But look at each metric in turn. So for example, how would we increase our audience reach or visitors to 1,800? If you've already got a website, you can engage the services of an SEO or search engine optimization expert, and they can help you to increase those visitors. To increase your average transaction value to 55, we've already talked about introducing higher cost items. You could, of course, increase your prices. And there are various other things that you can target and you can sit and brainstorm. But by having these numbers in front of you will encourage you to ask those questions, and as your brain loves questions, it will look for answers. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you have a lawn and landscaping business, I wish you well, and I hope that you can increase your sales and profits in a similar way to the way I've demonstrated today. My name is Russell Bowyer, and this video is being presented to you on behalf of bowraven.com.